Hey guys, Stanton with the One Audacious Move podcast here, the place where we weekly come together to hear stories of action and audacity in the face of a world and life where dreams often never become real. Here's a question to start today's episode off for you. Have you ever felt like your dream didn't count because it wasn't being seen by a lot of people? Because it wasn't big or loud or backed by followers or funding? If so, then this episode's for you. Today we're joined by Emma McGinnis. She built a triathlon from scratch. No plan for finances, no race map, just an idea thrown out at a coffee shop with a friend, and the audacity to run with it. And just a few days ago, that idea turned into, in her own words, the best day of her life. I mean, I don't know about you, but to hear an adult say that they just had the best day of their life, I want to hear more about that. So I wanted to have Emma on while she was experiencing the mountaintop of it all, a place of really feeling the weight of what it means to step into our dreams and just do them. Just go for them. This episode's about what happens when you stop waiting for the perfect moment and start building something that feels true. No platform, no blueprint, just the guts to move. And if you're stuck in the just-in-case version of your dream, always planning, always hesitating, this could be your nudge. And before we dive in, if you've done something bold lately or you know someone that has, let me know. I want to share those stories. This podcast is for the quiet doers, the normal people with big ideas, the ones brave enough to move before they feel ready. Perhaps your purpose is just on the other side of coming on to talk about it on the One Audacious Move podcast to encourage someone else down the road. And speaking of being brave before we feel ready, but creating something incredibly beautiful amidst that, let's get into it with Emma McGinnis. This one is one you don't want to miss. Emma McGinnis, thanks for coming on One Audacious Move.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
You were a very last minute ask. I think if I look at my phone right now, I might have asked you about 24 hours ago to come onto the podcast. And the reason being, and I think I told you this when I voice messaged you, I saw you posting on your Instagram story and you said that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you said might have been the best day of my life. Mm-hmm. About what you just put on, and that was Trace Race. And we'll get into what that is here in a second. Yeah. But before we get into that, before we get into the what, I kind of want to get into the how of how you're feeling. How do you feel right now after having hosted this incredible event?
Yeah. Well, two thoughts. One, I love the spontaneity of this text message. It feels like a really unique opportunity to be so fresh out of it, where like it still feels vibrant. I'm feeling two extremes. One is elated, like reflecting on this weekend. I mean, I meant what I said. Like, I think it might have been the best day of my life.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was magical. It was emotional. It was powerful. It was so many things that I'm sure we'll dive into. And the other half of that is exhausted. I think twofold. One of this major event that we've been working on coming to an end, and then also the actual physicality of the event. Yeah, I almost feel hungover, but not from drinking at the moment.
Yeah, your event didn't really probably have too much drinking going. Electrolytes, yes. Which is, we'll get into, I would like to kind of come back to the how you're feeling, because I think that's really important, and that was what caught my attention with this. Obviously, everything you were doing with Trace Race was, I've been following it since the beginning and since you announced it. But let us know, before we get too far into this, what is Trace Race?
Yeah. Trace Race is a homemade triathlon that my dear friend Kate Walker and I planned. And ultimately, it was an unofficial 70.3 mile triathlon that we did with our friends.
Wow. And I wanted to give the viewers context on like what exactly we were talking about here, because the idea, I love the branding of what Trace Race is. It's like a triathlon, but you came up with like a unique name for it. And also, we keep saying we'll get into stuff, but we'll get into the branding, because I feel like the branding was so strong for all of you. So that was like what stood out to me the most. But I would love to dive just a little bit further into the feeling of what you're feeling right now. Also, for your sake, just to give you space to kind of just process this. And I know you're like, oh, people are going to be watching this. I'm here with Cody. Like, it's not like you're journaling or something like that. But I remember I told you this briefly, that with the alignment experience, when my friend Boomer and I finished hosting that, we got invited on to a podcast the very next day. I mean, we were cleaning up still. We were returning furniture. We were cleaning up the space. returning the U-Haul, all of that stuff. We barely got any sleep because we went out that night with everybody that, came to the alignment experience and hung out with them late. We went on to that podcast and it was really life-giving, but that hungover feeling that you were talking about was really prevalent. And I remember looking back at that and I was like, I wish I would have been more present to the emotion that I was feeling, like that mountaintop feeling during all of that. And I guess I just want to give that mountaintop feeling for you space to kind of come back to the surface again before moving on too quickly away from that. Like, what does it feel like to do something like that and just feel, not to put words in your mouth, but fulfillment? And like, what made it the best day of your life? Like, what are you feeling? There's like a bunch of questions in there.
But, yeah, I know there's a lot to unpack. I think fulfillment is the right word. I feel like when I look at Saturday, it feels like a day of walking out on purpose and a day of just really rich community. And I think that, if anything, is like what gets me, of just the people that were a part of the day, both from who was participating and from Kate, who I planned it with, but also those who kind of jumped in at the last minute. I mean, we had a guy who photographed the event who we all met on a Friday. And by the end of this weekend, we're like, Justin, like just the joy of, I think, both, again, participants and those of our friends who were our aid stations, the energy that they brought. I think community has just been a really fruitful part of my time in Denver. And I feel like Saturday felt like seeing that accumulated all in one setting and all supporting each other and myself to a goal that we had feels really, really sweet. And when I look at Saturday, it's funny, I actually ran the half marathon portion with our mutual friend Michael, and in a lot of ways I feel like he turned into a bit of a pack mule for me. Like, he's just like handing me water as we're getting through this. But I turned to him mid-run, and I remember just feeling and saying, like, I just feel like I'm literally living in the midst of an answered prayer as we speak, just from the physicality of being able to do the event, which is a huge part of the backstory of why we did it this way. Some injuries and things I've been walking through in that regard. And I think Trace Race in a lot of ways felt like this synergistic moment of pulling different parts of things I value and people I value together with people that I love. And as I look back on it, it just felt like a moment of connectivity of these different areas of my life I value almost come to fruition in one. It was a really cool experience.
Yeah. Is it okay if I pry a little bit into like that why a little bit more?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, well, I guess
I slurp my matcha.
Yeah, slurp the matcha in the cute straw, sponsored by my wife.
Yes, Lisa. I mean, when I reference an answered prayer, I feel like in a lot of ways Trace Race was multifaceted in the ways that it served a purpose in my life this year. When referencing the health stuff, I mean, I guess, are we okay to dive into a little bit of like the why of Trace Race, or the how it came to be?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. When I originally had kind of connected with my dear friend Kate Walker on this, it was originally under the intention of, we're signing up for a half Ironman. This is our goal. And how cool that we realized that we had this as a shared vision. And for about the past 2 years, I've just been navigating a lot of knee issues and have been seeing PTs, doctors, just trying to get to the bottom of it. And I think I was feeling ready in the sake of it's time to get back into doing something I love. I've been incredibly maladaptive, avoidant, and just almost needing a goal to like work through something. And I couldn't help but feel, as we're like looking at all of these official races and like getting ready to look at dropping money on them, feeling this hesitation of almost, am I ready for that? It feels a little too out there, too bold. And honestly, I look back at the past few years and I've wasted a lot of money on race entries that I ended up sitting out on, which first world problem at its finest. But I think it was just bringing me back to that of, am I about to set this goal and not achieve it? Or am I about to, drop all this money and then feel like it was time wasted if I don't feel up for that? And we, I think, had a moment of recognizing last year it's not the right time. Let's sit this out and let's revisit come the new year. And in that, this year, we started exchanging race dates and looking at the different cities and seeing kind of which event is the one for us this year. And I think in some of those discussions, some of those similar feelings were still coming back, but I feel like I had a heightened sense of feeling like it's time to start working through this knee issue of mine and finally feeling like I had a bit more of the support that I needed with the right physical therapist, the right people. And in that, though, I think Kate and I were still stumped on, we're about to drop a lot of money on this. The culture of it feels a little bit more intense than what I need right now in working through this. And in some of that discussion, I mean, we were sitting at Bardo House coffee shop, and there was just this one moment of like, what if we did this on our own terms? Like, if our goal is simply to do this, what's to say we can't still do it, but do it in a way that feels most true to us in this moment and what both of us need. And it was kind of one of those ideas where you like throw it out there and you know how you never fully know how serious someone is within that. I feel like we just had this moment of like both realizing like, oh wait, no, we're actually serious. Like what would it look like? And from there, I think it kind of just caught a glimpse of an idea or that light bulb moment. And I don't think either of us fully ever anticipated it would land into what it did on Saturday. But I basically think we came to a moment of, I know I need to set a goal for myself that feels like a stretch goal, but in doing it on our own terms felt like it created the safeguards that I needed just while I was working through something. And in a lot of ways, I feel like what we were able to do is almost break through some of the mental barriers I was wrestling with, some of the injury things I've been navigating, by having the comfort of this is something we're creating, we're choosing, and doing it in our own context and terms versus having that external pressure.
For sure. And so a triathlon is running, swimming, biking. And when you talk about doing something your own way, I just kind of want to hone in on that for a second because I think that's a really special and important piece of everything to do with what you're saying.
Yeah.
What is the typical way that a triathlon is done? And then what was that moment when you and, what was her name, Kate?
Yes.
Kate were sitting in a coffee shop and you're like, wait, like we can do this our own way. So like, what is that? What's the difference from what you guys were envisioning and what Trace Race ended up being compared to what maybe a normal triathlon would be?
Yeah. So as far as the context of an actual triathlon event, still had the same vision of swim, bike, run, same order, same distance. But I think what we started thinking through is what would it look like for us to create an event that felt silly, that felt fun, that felt a little bit less pressurized. And it's interesting because I actually have been in a lot of events and tries and races where I love the pressure of that and having that sign up. But I think just with what I was working through with some of my injury and just some of the mindset that I had around that, I just was a little worrisome of what that environment would look like. And honestly, I think I was navigating a lot of fear of re-injuring myself trying to achieve in that capacity. And basically, I think what doing it on our own terms allowed us to do was have a say in the community and culture we were trying to build around it, as well as have a little bit more safeguards in place. Like something that we allowed people to do was choose their own adventure. So there was 5 of us that did the whole thing, but the rest of them did a relay of some capacity. And so as we started to explore the kind of community aspect of what we could do in creating a race, I think it just opened doors to bring other people into it. And in a lot of ways, I mean, I even think back to the discussion of, do we open to relays or, are we going too hard, too fast and making it a half Ironman distance? Like, should we look at a sprint or an Olympic? But I think I knew I needed the big goal because even if I couldn't complete it, I at least was heading in the right direction. To fall short, which is such a cliche, right? Of shoot for the stars and land on the...
Yeah, but it works.
Yes.
It works.
Yes. And I remember we've actually had many conversations of, I think, both feeling pretty intimidated by the distance and pretty intimidated by just that goal where we reassess, should we consider, making it a shorter event? And that was even kind of when we opened to doing it to relays, the safeguard we put in place of, no, let's train as if we're doing the whole thing and plan accordingly. But now we have this safeguard in place that should, for any reasons, health-wise, life-wise, we don't feel like that's what's best for us right now, we can still hit that goal. We're just doing it with other people. And again, still pointing us in the direction of what we're hoping to ultimately get to. So yeah, I think if anything, just doing it on our own terms to us meant, or to me meant, having the safeguards in place to start working in the direction I wanted to be heading, but without so much at stake financially. And yeah, I mean, probably for my ego too, of not being able to sign up for another race that I can't do, kind of thing.
Right. What happened with your knee? Like, tell us a little bit about what was the injury that we're kind of referring to with the knee?
Yeah, so I've just been dealing with a lot of chronic knee pain, patellofemoral syndrome. I had a ski incident that had kind of triggered a lot of the pain that I've been dealing with. And yeah, it's been just a lot of kneecap injury issues that unfortunately running has always been the big impetus towards. And yeah, I think when I first navigated that, I got super into cycling because cycling would keep it a little bit more at bay, but then was starting to find that cycling would bother it. And so I mean, it's been like a 2-year ordeal of just kind of this repetitive injury that's was causing a lot of frustration. And in a lot of ways, I think I reached a point of almost accepting this injured mindset. And I mean, this past year, and a lot of what Trace Race has done has been unpacking just the narrative that I've told myself around this pain or injury. And so I think in a lot of ways, I'm realizing this year just how intertwined your mental mentality is within an injury to the physical mentality of it. And yeah, in a lot of ways, I think that's been a big lesson that Trace Race has helped me work through by having a target.
Yeah. I ask about the knee injury, A, because I'm curious, but B, because I have just recently gotten into running and any kind of sport in general, to be honest. Like, I'm not an athletic guy, but decided to sign up for a marathon and started loading miles super fast. I decided, like, beginning of March, I was going to do it. Ran the Colfax Marathon mid-May, which I think 10 weeks is supposed to be like, that's a pretty short timeline for training for a marathon, or so I've heard. And my body paid the price for it, to where I was supposed to go on like an 18-mile run one day, and I made it 10 miles in and had to limp back home, and I was barely able to walk for a week. Couldn't do anything for 3 weeks. And it was interesting how much that knee injury revealed how much I actually cared about the marathon, and how much it messed with my mind that my knee was hurt. Like, if I was going around doing my normal thing during the day or during my life and my knee was hurt, I'd probably be okay. But because I set this goal, it was really messing with me. And so a question I have for you, and I'm not trying to like lead you into a certain answer, feel free to be honest, but is there any part of you, having done Trace Race, having seen it be one of the most beautiful, impactful days of your life, having told Michael during the half marathon, like, this is an answer prayer, is there any part of you that looks back on the setback that the knee pain has been, and is at all thankful that it happened?
Ooh, interesting. Yes, I feel like in a lot of ways, this injury has opened up so many unique conversations this year around, how do I define movement in this chapter of my life? What do I prioritize in regards to movement? And I think, if anything, like I said, I realized just how much this physical ailment I was navigating for the last bit of time was impacting just the mental narrative I was telling myself, in this mindset of hyper avoidance and, okay, we're weak, or maybe this is time to recognize that running is just not in my future anymore and I need to adapt my activities accordingly. And I think in a lot of ways I needed to do that for a big chunk of time. And I actually look back at the past few years, and I think, and part of sitting out on a lot of these events, or kind of taking a step back from more of the physical activity that I typically am used to, what that opened was a lot of space for creative exploration. And I think in some ways, I almost look at it as like, artist Emma really came to the surface in that time, while athlete Emma really subsided. And I think part of what was really magical about Trace Race was it just feels like this equilibrium I'm finding again, of finding that this athlete identity that I think has had a lot of things to work through in regards to just what does that look like to be an athlete in this phase of life when you're no longer on a sports team and you're no longer, attached to an event or something. How does that come to life, and is that in day-to-day activity? Is it around events? And I think that's something that I just realized was really dormant, yet a really big part of me in my life. And maybe to give a little bit more context to that, I feel like there's been a lot of identity work that took place this year in regards to understanding that piece of me. I studied exercise science in college. I went to grad school for exercise science. Like, that was such a big part of who I was and who I am, but I think it's just felt less at the surface with not being in that field professionally at the moment and exploring other things. And I think it's been a year of just trying to understand that is still a really big part of me, but what do I want that to look like moving forward?
Yeah, and I think it's really cool to see, this artistic side of you that you said has come out in the last year or so, mixed with this exercise science or the desire for movement. I love seeing different parts of people's lives start to intertwine. And there's certain things that as we go through life that start to make more sense as we go through life, almost as we look back at the breadcrumb trail that we've passed. In a way, it all of a sudden makes a little bit more sense where we are. And I bringing up the alignment experience again, during my presentation, I had this flow chart. I might have mentioned this on last week's episode, but I had this flow chart of all these little things that when I was a kid that I enjoyed doing or that I used to enjoy doing. And I showed as best as I could, because I have this kind of logical engineering brain, how they all connected and how wedding videography led me to wanting to start a podcast. And how I had this weird writing thing that I actually wasn't doing anything about, but I had just discovered. And all of a sudden, I can't remember what exactly it was, but I had this one line come off of something from when I was a kid, maybe something that was adventurous tied with videography, and it made me want to host a retreat in Iceland or something. And so it's just really cool to see all these little pieces come together to make something that is truly us and truly unique. And I think I say all that to bring it back to something that you said a little bit ago, that whenever you two were sitting in the coffee shop, and you said, like, how do we do this our way? How do we do this the Emma and Kate way that fits where we are right now, with where we want to be, with how we want to do it?
Yeah.
Because that, most of the time, is how you're going to bring purpose into this world. That's how you're going to bring, like, the beauty and the creativity of who you are into this world. And I think that a lot of times people miss that. People sometimes look at the things that have happened in their life as crutches, literal crutches, maybe sometimes depending on the knee injury, as things that are objectively setbacks, but that they will use them as excuses to not do something. But even in the midst of the knee pain, which is a big deal in the world of what you're doing, like some people, maybe when they thought you were talking about health stuff, they were going to talk about having cancer or something like that. Like, to some people that I would have maybe not understood how big of a deal knee pain was before doing it myself, but it is a big setback in that whole world of doing anything with motion. It's like to the joint or whatever that connects your legs. And I just think it's really cool and worth noting that in the midst of that, you still found a way to be you.
Yeah, thanks. It's cool to think on. I almost laugh too, because I mean, yes, there's a layer of that in my story of being around, just like something to work through from an injury perspective. But what felt really natural to Kate and I think what made this really special, was almost this moment for us to create our own sports team too. And I think an aha that I had was, I need to be tapping into the people in my life to work through this finally. And again, it's been a layer of, I've been in PT for the past year and a half trying to navigate this, but I think there was something about this year where it made it very clear it's time to work through it, right? It needs to not be just this thing lingering, but rather this thing that we're actually navigating and dealing with. And, there are layers where, of course, there are moments where I'm like, just tell me I need surgery. Let's get surgery and move on with our life, and almost the frustration of that not being the case. But I think I think something that's been just a really common theme in my world is just the fact that we're meant to do life with people. And I think sometimes I've taken a little bit more of that hyper self-sufficient mindset or independent mindset. And so I think there was a little bit of a vulnerability and finally kind of opening up to people in my life of I am dealing with this. And you're right, on the extremity or extreme list of things to be navigating from a health issue, like this is very minimal in the grand scheme. But also the fact that that's something that is impacting me in my daily life. It's something that I do believe God cares deeply towards, working with me through. And so, yeah, I feel like almost in bringing people into that has been where I've seen that momentum. And, Kate grew up playing basketball. She played college basketball and has always also been around very much team-oriented sports and dynamics. And I think when we originally decided to do this, it felt very clear in the sake of her and I are working towards a goal, but I think it felt like it really got legs when we started bringing our friends into it and sending out the texts and seeing who we could get to sign up. And in that moment, it felt very much more of we're all building this together. And Kate and I just, for whatever reason, had this idea fall in our hands to kind of create the vessel that then became Trace Race.
Yeah. It's cool to notice something becoming more synchronous as time goes on with bringing more people into things like that, because the same can be said about this podcast of me in the beginning just doing solo episodes, and that felt okay, but something still felt a little bit off. And then I was reaching out to these big name people to come onto the podcast, like we talked to you about Bob Goff. Haven't heard back from him yet, but
not yet.
If anybody's
Bob, if you're listening,
Bob, come on the podcast. Over time of asking those big name people to come on and radio silence and stuff, it made me think about who are the maybe from this social media influencer world of people, the ordinary people in my life that are doing extraordinary things. Who are the people that are already in my circle that I can look at, that I'm like looking over right now, that can bring me more life and bring this thing that I'm doing more life. And even just starting to do guest episodes, I can already feel and notice, like I said, like you notice that difference, notice something feels more synchronous, seems more aligned, bringing more people into it. Even with, like, you were talking about your photographer, what's his name?
Justin.
Yeah, bringing people in just with all of their different talents. We are surrounded by people in our lives that we bring them into our purpose, our passion, and it also helps them come alive as well. Did you see that happen during your journey with Trace Race?
Oh, totally. I mean, it felt contagious. And I even think back to when the weekend that you and I met and our paths crossed up at Work from Dome. Yeah. And I think about talking about it when it still felt like it was in the infancy of its idea phase, and just how much energy was poured into that around like people at a table, or when you first told me about the 1 a.m. project or 1 a.m. club, like I remember just feeling like the enthusiasm of that. So I do definitely think that it's been both with those who participated within the experience itself, as well as those who have just been a thought partner or a champion to the idea from afar. I think there's felt like a lot of energy and support to bring it to life in both sides of that. And I mean, it all comes back to who are you surrounding yourself by and with. And I just think, yeah, again, it's such a lesson that's just been so trying to think of the proper word here, that has been highlighted in my move to Denver, is just like, we are meant to do life with people. And I think that in and of itself just felt really special about this event, of not only chasing a goal with people, but bringing them into a goal and bringing them into an idea and a project. And again, it just kind of feels like Kate and I, for whatever reason, landed on this idea. And I do think both of us had the right skill sets to bring it to life in ways that felt fun and energizing. But it was truly the event that it was because of the energy that everyone brought to the table, day of, the build up, the night before. And it kind of feels like, I think anyone who was there or participated would hopefully agree, just like we had a hodgepodge of kind of friends from different pockets participating, and by the end of it I just feel like we had a shared bond
Yeah.
over 90 feet 95-degree weather in Denver doing that triathlon. But
Early June.
yes.
That's crazy how hot it's been.
Yeah.
I love how much support you felt in the midst of, I feel like that's so important for having our dreams become reality, to manifest those into existence. Was, I guess, when I think about a triathlon, if I've ever seen videos or stuff, and again, it's so outside of my world. If I've ever seen a video of it, it's like this horde of people swimming. It's this massive bikes tearing down a road, and it's basically like, a marathon running down the road too. It's all these people. And so I always have looked at a triathlon as being like this big event with like hundreds, thousands of people doing it. Was it ever hard for you? And how many people did this one?
We had 18.
18.
Mm-hmm.
Was it ever hard for you? Did it ever feel like, amidst that support, did it ever feel like what you were doing wasn't important because it wasn't big? Did you ever struggle with those feelings along the way?
Honestly, no, because I think what we needed for this chapter of life was for it to be small and to be intimate. I think there's definitely, I'm a big picture person where like I would be lying to say I don't have dreams of like fireworks at a finish line DJ set going. So I think there's definitely layers of that came into play. But I think, again, just having a little bit of the year that I think we've both had in our own ways, I think we needed something that felt very us, very small, and very surrounded by the right people. And that's, I think, what it turned into. So definitely, again, big picture Emma, absolutely. And, the daydreamer in me could see that. But I think because there was such a vulnerability of would I even be able to finish this event? Can I even do the whole thing? I almost think I needed that smaller crowd just as I was working through that mentally myself.
Yeah, that's really amazing, because if you would have asked me that question, I would have said yes, because I struggle with a modern day addiction to growth and numbers and, attendees and all of these different things, all of those metrics. It's something that I can't help but look at. And so it can be confusing for me sometimes because I'm doing things I'm deeply passionate about. And I'm also plagued by looking at how many listens something has, how many likes, how many views, all these different things. And so I love that you said no, actually, to that question, because it means you're different than me. It means I can learn something from you, and maybe people listening to this as well that are similar to me and feel like because their Instagram page only has 200 followers or 1,000 followers or 5,000 or 10,000, or even, more than that, or a few likes, or nobody's listening to it. I just want to dig deeper into that. How do you navigate the noise of this world that tells you that something is only good and important if it's big and noticed? And although it was noticed and championed by people in your life, it wasn't big on the scale of a triathlon or anything, but that doesn't take away from its importance. And I know that, but I'm also on the side of, along the way, even for the alignment experience or something, I'm just going to keep making parallels with experience of wanting more people to be a part of this thing, and, feeling imposter syndrome along the way because I have these visions of lots of people in a crowd or lots of people attending, the page growing, all these things. How do you keep that mindset? I know you said you felt like you needed to keep it small, but how did you keep off that, the noise of
the ways of the world?
Yeah.
It's an interesting question because it feels twofold for me. I think in the actual event and the builds to it, again, I think it felt really sweet and intimate to be doing in a group of our friends, and a group that felt like we could rely on, that we were all in it together. And truly, too, Kate and I kept telling ourselves, like, no matter even who participates at the end of the day, this is a goal that we have as two friends and we want to do it. So I think that was a very grounding thing. But to, I guess, address the question you asked on the ways of the world piece, that I don't have mastered. And I think I actually relate a lot to you. There was definitely thoughts and wanderings of, I'm putting something into the world. Like, what what does it look like to be received? How is it received? Who's receiving it? And so I think, my ego in that realm is still learning how to navigate that when there is a lot that's pushed around numbers, views, having that credibility. And I think in a lot of ways, there was peace within this project not being that, because it felt so innately aligned with everything I've needed this year. And I think with that, it felt clear for me that it felt like something God's hand was over, in the sake of, being with people, doing something that I love, being creative in the process of it. And so I think I did feel really grounded within the fact that it felt like we were doing the right thing, even in the hiccups, even in the roadblocks, because when we'd reach those, there was always this very clear avenue towards the fact that we were up to something meaningful, even if it ended up just being for the two of us. So all to say, I guess, yeah, I'm hesitant to say I don't deal or navigate with that, because egotistical Emma, oh my gosh, absolutely. And I think too, there's a layer of that, like, for me, there was an art project embedded within this experience. And so putting the brand into the world, putting, this design into the world and kind of figuring that out, I think there was definitely vulnerability within that, I mean, to your point, right? It's a tiny little event that we did with our friend group, and I think that's everything it needed to be. But of course, just given the way and structure our world operates, it's hard for the mind to not wonder and think of those bigger visions and things.
Right. Yeah. And I think anything that we do in this world, it would be hard to say you did it 100% selfless, like 100%. Like, we are ego-driven beings, and they're even just like a small, minute portion of something that, even giving away money, to the homeless or to a shelter or something, there can be ego and riddled throughout that. But something that I think I've heard you say more than anything so far on this episode is that you needed this. You needed it to be this way. It was like fulfilling a need inside of you. And so can you speak to that just a little bit more of like, I think it's really beautiful. There's this air of, and just excuse me as I kind of struggled through this, like there's this air of peace in the way that you're talking about it. That's really beautiful. Of, I'll come at you with like this big question about like, oh, like, was there noise? Like did you feel like it had to be big? Triathlons are this way, blah, blah, blah. And there's something peaceful about the way that you're saying, no, I just needed it to be this way. No, I felt peace in doing it this way. And yes, I know you're admitting to being human, and
again, I wanted fireworks.
Yeah. But I just think it's something I don't want to move away from too fast. I want to linger on, because how do you know you need something? That's something that I'd like to learn from. And for people out there that maybe don't know what they need to be doing in this season, because another word that I'm saying a lot is noise. There's a lot of noise from this world. There's a lot of noise when we open our phones, whether you're in any industry of comparison of what our spouses say we should do, of what finances say we should do, of what our family, our culture says that we need to do. There's certain ways that things are done. But how do you know when is, maybe I'll save the when, but because I do want to get to that, but how do you know you need something? Like, what are you listening to inside of you to give you that peace as you move into doing something that is uniquely you and that feels aligned to you, and is, even though you need to do it a certain way, it still is bold. And that's like a big asterisk on this whole thing, is like, just because you need to do it in a different way with maybe relays and, accommodating a certain direction that you wanted to do it, it still is very audacious, the word of the show. It still is very audacious, and we'll get into that. But talk about that knowing of the need and how you came about like listening to that and acting on that.
Yeah. Well, maybe to give a little bit more backstory, obviously shared working through the injury thing. This year just started off in the opposite way I would have expected in a lot of ways. And I don't know if actually Lisa ever shared this with you, but the week that I had met you two at Work for Dome was such a unique moment because I had actually gone through a breakup maybe 4 days before that. And it's funny actually thinking back at that week because I was really hesitant about going, just being in a fragile state, being around a bunch of strangers, and kind of felt this we just need to go somewhere and do something in this phase. And I mean, at that point we had the idea of Trace Race, but in a lot of ways I feel like that week served a really serendipitous purpose in my life in the sake of being in that group of people that were so energizing, so entrepreneurial, so life-giving. And I mean, I look back at that week and truly it felt like a really strong testimony of just God's kindness and weakness in that regard of, someone removed from my life, but then also being surrounded with such life-giving, powerful people who really spoken to me and saw me for being creative and saw me for being just energized by an idea. And I think that, and I mean, I truly say, like, when you gave me the opportunity to do the alignment experience virtually, the timing of that felt so impactful because I was in a spot where I was literally looking at 2025 of what on earth does this year hold? Just like going through grief, navigating that process, having this injury, feeling like they needed to confront it finally. And I just think all of those things in combination of having this amazing friend of mine that has this shared goal simultaneously as me felt really clear that it was just time to lean into that. And I think sometimes, I mean, I've always been probably a little bit more of a head in the cloud kind of human of ideas popping, let's do this, let's make that. And I think sometimes I almost wrestle within that of trying to understand, like what are ideas versus we should actually grasp and kind of run with versus what are those that are just kind of fleeting in those moments. And I just think that especially the month of February, there was a lot of just sitting in grief, sitting in this injury, sitting with God in that time period, sitting in community. And it just became so clear that in this unraveling, I think there's a lot of questioning of, who am I? Who do I want to be? Who do I want to be surrounded by? And a lot of that just pointed in this direction. So I don't know that I ever had this very distinct moment alone, but it felt like a compounding of these different variables and peace within moving forward. And candidly, I needed a project to throw myself at to just be moving forward in some capacity. And I think oftentimes when we're navigating grief or navigating pain, just searching and grasping for something that brings energy and makes us feel alive. And in a lot of ways, I think this process of building this triathlon and doing it with people I love, it was just really therapeutic to me this year.
Yeah. I love what you said there toward the end. You talked about sitting in grief, sitting in different circles. You said sitting 3 or 4 times. And
crisscross applesauce, hands
sitting,
open.
just meditating in these groups. But I think it's really cool because I think that something that I'm noticing by maybe it's just the way that my worldview or the way that I look at things, but a lot of times what I need to do, what is right for me is when I am sitting and just being in the grief, being in the anxiety, being in the stress, being in the group, observing the people in the group, listening to the people in the group, just being, I guess it sounds cheesy to say, but being alive. Mm-hmm. When you are fully alive, you do listen. You do watch what's going on around you, and you do watch what's going on inside of you. And yeah, it's not always this big fireworks moment of, oh my gosh, I need to do this. But there's nudges that we feel in our soul as we sit and do things. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. Something that I want to dive into a little bit more here is, and I always reference the viewer because every word I say, I'm just thinking about who might be watching this, that might be resonating with it or can take away something, because what gets me so excited in this life, the thing that gets me the most excited for my own journey and to see other people do is when people decide to do something. There's nothing, everybody has a superpower. I think mine is audacity to go and do something. And, I love having people on. So I think I want to break down the process with you of maybe what that looked like, failures, hard parts of it, financially, getting from that stage at the coffee shop to where this thing is real. You said on your audio message yesterday, it had been a roller coaster between that time and the 16th, or when was it? 14th?
14th. Yeah. Today.
So 2 days ago. Yeah. Today's 16th. Tell me about what the process was like of making this thing, because a lot of people have felt that feeling in the coffee shop of, hey, let's do this our way. Blah. Like, I'm so excited. Yeah. High five. We're teammates. Let's do this. And then one person starts to fade.
Yeah.
Or one person decides that wants to go a different direction with something. Or maybe both of those people just kind of lose gusto because life comes back really fast after an idea comes out into the open. And so can you talk to us about that process a little bit?
Yeah. I almost wish Kate was here. That way she could join in on this to do it justice. I'm happy to share about that. A couple of things that stick out to me is, one, I actually appreciated doing it with someone more than doing it alone, because I feel like it created a sense of partnership where we fed off of each other's energy towards it. And in a lot of ways, I think almost stabilized each other too. I feel like we had a lot of conversations up front of just, what is the goal of this? At the end of the day, it's for her and I to be able to do a half Ironman distance triathlon together. And so I think having that grounded helped us almost have a foundation that we could act upon beyond that. And again, I wish she was here, because I think both of us would just laugh, because it was truly the most DIY project ever. Like, I think we landed on our actual race route like a month ago. And just
That's amazing.
I almost laugh because it felt really joyful in the sake of figuring it out as we go. And that's something that I personally find very energizing. And I almost feel like part of what felt really fun about this project is I have an entrepreneurial spirit in me at times, and it almost felt like a vessel for that of, okay, we have something we're trying to build, plan, bring people into, and how do we do that? Who do we ask, kind of thing. And, Kate works actually at DU in the athletic department. And so she's kind of the perfect human in the sake of having the logistical mindset, but also intermixed with the culture and the people mindset. And I think it was fun because we just each made it what we needed it to be. For me, I did feel really creatively energized by it of, what do we do if we make a brand? If we make, I'm trying to learn animation right now. What if I use this project as a way to try to make animations? And I think she gave me full permission to kind of go and play and do as I please, and right back at her in reverse. And I almost think that in doing it with someone, it allowed each of us to have ebb and flows, because, when she was feeling burnout or tired from it, I feel like I was able to kind of carry the weight. And when I was feeling burnout or skeptical of something, she was able to carry the weight. And so basically this is when it turns into like a Kate Walker hype fest, because I just think, if anything, it was just this really sweet moment in our friendship of getting to build something together and finding the joy in doing it. And because the whole premise of this is we're doing this unofficially, we're not trying to be this big official event, I think it kept it fun and kept it silly. And I mean, we would have race meetings and we would send each other calendar invites, and it just felt silly, right? I'm like looking at my work calendar and it's like Trace race meeting tomorrow. And so I feel like in a lot of ways we almost took the route of, we're not trying to be official, but in that it made it very fun and funny to try to figure out the ways. Like, I was the one to be like, what if we get this sponsored?
And you got 2 sponsors too, right?
We got 3.
You got 3.
Yes.
How do you get those sponsors?
Yeah. Honestly, just the power of people. I had I had posted something on Instagram, and I had a couple of people reach out to me that had a connection at 2 different nutrition companies. And then last week we actually had a friend of ours who was participating, have a mutual friend who's starting a an electrolyte popsicle company called Rally Pop, and he was the hype man at our finish line. So it was
I
just
think I saw that in one of your reels. Was it somebody like dancing? Or something?
yes.
Yeah.
This is the subtle message of get Rally Pop.
There it is.
Yes.
There's the plug, the first official plug of my podcast or a product. I know this podcast, was it a financial sponsorship from these?
No, none of them. Just sending us race day goodies. And candidly, I feel like that was the goal from the start in all of them of just, can we get people to send us stuff for race day?
Right. It's really cool to look at everything that we're talking about, and, you know, from the sponsorships to the people that join, to you and Kate's friendship and journey together as quasi, I would call it like business partners too, because you're doing something like this together. There's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
And here I go again, when Boomer and I were planning the alignment experience and planning this one still, but last year, you know, we meet like probably once a week. We have like that same thing, a calendar. It'll say, we call them alignment days. So we'll spend a whole day like working on stuff. Right now we're planning for our little digital event here in 2 weeks, but
I just signed up for it.
You did. You're coming. That's amazing. Yeah, we're road tripping out there.
Second plug of this
Second
podcast.
Plug. Realign. But I remember one time Boomer asked me, and he said, if I was not here, would you still be doing this?
Yeah.
And I was like, And I was kind of scared to answer, because I was like, he's probably going to say, yeah, he would be, because it's so aligned and it's, you know, it's what he should be doing. And I had to be honest. And I was like, I don't think so. And I was like, what about you? And I thought he was going to say yes. He's like, heck no. He was like, no, there's no way.
He said, oh.
I was like, whoo, okay, we're equals. Cool.
Glad we're on the same page.
But like, just the theme I'm seeing throughout this is the power of people. And I think it speaks so much to our human experience that there's so much, especially in a post-COVID world where we are confined, we're doing things on our own. I mean, I sit down in my little deep, dark basement and work on things by myself all the time, and I'm not around people. And the only times that I am working with people is back when I had an office space with Boomer and another guy, but B, you know, like whenever we like went to Vibe Coffee and Wine and all of us were working. And so, but when I do those things, I feel so energized. And I just think it speaks so powerfully to the human experience. And, you know, they talk about the blue zones around the world and what are the metrics by which people live the longest, the blue zones being, you know, where people live the longest.
Yeah.
And, you know, Sardinia was one of them. And Lisa and I went on a vacation there, and we stayed in one of the cities. I forget the name of it right now, but one of the metrics for the blue zones was having community into old age. And everywhere we go in Sardinia, we'd just see these little groups of either old men sitting at a bar, hanging out, maybe drinking a beer or an Aperol Spritz or whatever it is, very Italian, or this group of like really old women sitting there like all together out in the street, staring at us, walking by like, who are these tourists, you know, in the middle of the city. And I just bring that up because I just think it's really beautiful that, and not to be missed, that if you want to do something, look around you at who wants to do something as well. You're probably running alongside of people. It's a big path by which we gain friends, is doing similar things, you know? And so who is doing something similar around us, and then being cognizant of what we need, being cognizant of what is right for us, and then bringing other people into that. And I don't know, that's just, you don't have to respond to that at all, but it's just like a piece of this whole thing that I think is really beautiful is the people aspect of it. Something you said, Emma, that I wanted to talk about a little bit more was, you said you were building the plane while you were flying it, or mid-flight, something like that.
Whatever the cliche
is. What does that look like in real time? I know you said you didn't figure the route out till like a month before, but like what does that look like?
Yeah, basically we figured out all the fun things and then had an oh shoot moment. We actually have a triathlon in a month. We got to figure out the logistics. Yeah, when I think back on us starting this, and kind of when it was an idea, and then when the idea got legs and started walking and then started running and sprinting into the weekend that was this past weekend, I think we went about it in such a silly, convoluted process. Truly, it was let's get a bunch of people to lean into this experience without necessarily having the blueprint of what the experience was. And part of that is, I think, why it feels joyful, right? We're reaching out, texting our friends if they're willing to do a half Ironman triathlon unofficially without a race course. And I think like I laughed. There was actually a guy, he unfortunately ended up not doing it race day, but first question he asked us was, well, can I see a course map? And I think Kate and I looked at each other and we're like, yeah, we'll get it to you soon. And it's like a month went by, 2 months went by, and just these.
Was that, sorry to interrupt you, but was that as scary, like having, like putting something together and then having somebody ask for a material that is typically required of something, and then you being like, we'll get back to you? Is that kind of like put any kind of like weird feeling into you when they asked you that?
Oh, totally. I think both of us, I think I laugh because there was almost a layer of, we were incredibly lackadaisical towards planning this in some ways. I think there's a layer of, when he asked us that, of us being like, crap, we don't have it together. And just realizing that there is a dependency of us having some things in order. And I think back to some of the logistics we had to think through, and a big debate that we actually got into was the open water versus pool swim. And for about 2 months, her and I both stood on opposite sides of the spectrum of our opinion in doing it in a pool versus open water. And that took us a hot minute to figure out, what is the best route for us to do this safely, wisely. But also, I was team open water for a bit, but I actually changed my opinion to pool, and I'm glad that we did. But so it's just funny. And thankfully, we were able to almost go about these debates really playfully. And that was the biggest piece, though, right? Where do we do the swim? And once we finally narrowed that down to being done at a pool, and part of that came down to safety. Part of that came down to the time of year we were doing it. There wouldn't be a ton of access to open water to train. And then it became the question of, okay, what Denver Rec Center pool is going to let us have their pool? And then it started turning into the emails to Denver Rec Center of, can we rent your pool? And he laughed. There's an email chain with probably like 16 different messages of like, Kate, Emma. We would take time, take turns following up with it. And we actually didn't even get the pool that we did the swim in officially approved until about 2 weeks ago. And I remember we had an oh shit moment of, if we don't hear back from them, do we just take this group of 10, 15 people who are all doing the swim to a rec center and hope no one else is in it? So there's a layer of, our planning that was definitely done in a very, I think, trusting manner, in the sake of, we knew it was going to fall into place the way it intended. But I definitely think both of us had our own moments of panic that thankfully we could talk each other off a ledge on, but realizing that, we needed to figure out some logistics sooner than later.
For sure. And it's all a learning process too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you haven't done a triathlon before, and sometimes it can make you feel like an imposter when somebody messages you something like that in the very beginning. But it can also be a kick in the butt to help you kind of get things together too. The whole idea of putting together the plane while you're flying it, whatever the adage is kind of I was researching a little bit deeper than what that phrase might connotate, because we talked about that same thing on last week's podcast, building the plane while you're flying it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's actually what we always need to be doing, because it's the just in time way of going about life versus the just in case. And the just in case people, they sit in procrastination, which is they'll sit in movement. And I talk about this all the time. I'm going to explain it again, that movement versus action, movement's different.
Mm-hmm.
That you can be procrastinating. Movement is procrastination sometimes in disguise if you never make it turn into action. So you can plan and you can do research and you can make all the designs and all this stuff, but unless you put it out into the world, unless you hit publish, unless you take that first step on a training run or sign up for the thing, it doesn't become a reality. And there's a lot of people that live in that realm of just in case. They will do all of the research. They'll know everything to do it. They have been talking about it to their friends for years. We all know the people that have been talking about things for years, but they're living in just in case world of making sure they have every single duck in a row before they do something. And it's really fear that's disguising. And it's okay to be scared. audacity, the whole idea of it is to feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah.
But then the just-in-time notion is really just the way that humans do things. And I think that's happens what you're experiencing with like a month out with the course thing is like first time doing something. I felt the same thing when I've like put on retreats for people. Somebody will ask for an itinerary right in the beginning and I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I'm like,
oof.
I get these done like a week before, and I also like keeping things a surprise, but
Yeah.
at any rate, the just in time, like it's just the way that things happen. You build the thing as you continue forward in time. And the biggest hurdle you got to get over is just putting it out into the world. And that first sign up is one of the best feelings in the world, or that first interaction where your passion meets the world, something that you're really excited about. What did it look like for you actually getting this? So you guys are sitting at the coffee shop, hey, let's do it. But what took it from being just two friends sitting there ideating to being real? Like, what was that step?
I think when we first started texting our people to invite them, I think there was a layer of curiosity of, would people actually bite at that? Would there be interest, or would it be truly Kate and I doing a triathlon and we just getting our friends to come cheer us on kind of thing? And I think seeing that there was actual buy-in or interest in it, one, made it feel like we could create something involving other people. And I think as we started to see that come to life, something that we actually did leading up to June 14th was create an experience where we had a weekly workout. We did 3 different spaghetti nights, kind of building up to it. And in a lot of ways, I think both of us reached our tension points in those where, we'd have some weekly workouts where it'd be a group of 10 and others where it's Kate and I and one other friend. Mm-hmm. And I think in some of that, it was hard to get a gauge of, are people in it? Are they not? And, had some of those just like questioning moments of what are we doing in that build? And I think we just remained consistent of either way, her and I need to train and need to have this workout. And so I think having the mindset again of at the end of the day, her and I are trying to chase a goal together helped again ground us throughout that. But it was really fun to see kind of as the months moved forward and kind of different pockets of people started to participate, just that start to come to life collectively. And I mean, this is where it totally felt like creative play for me, where I'm like, of course we're getting swim caps, of course we're getting stickers. And so like that part for me just became fun of like, how do we get just people to feel a part of this? And, one of our spaghetti nights, Michael did a photo shoot for us and it was so fun and so silly. And I think ultimately, again, our goal was to start creating a sports team. And so I think as we started to feel that energy come into play, it felt very clear that we were taking those steps forward, but also in the times that it did feel dry or did feel confusing, us almost having the commitment to each other of we still need to do this towards this goal that we have helped a lot. So I think just having, again, her as this camaraderie, and no matter kind of what the rest of the group decides, we still owe this to each other, helped, I think, progress it forward through a lot of that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I want to dive into that just a little bit, because you know what? The alignment experience is just going to be the analogous thing that I'm going to reference throughout this entire thing.
Well, and it inspired Trace Race, so I'm excited to welcome it into the conversation.
But there's this balance between doing something out of passion and doing something out of purpose. Mm-hmm. Because when Boomer and I are planning the alignment experience and we're thinking about what we need to do, and we hit those roadblocks, those moments of us maybe butting heads on an idea. Him and I are very different people. We have to go back to this thing that we keep saying, well, what serves the alignment experience the best? What ego am I bringing into this that is making me just want my way? Mm-hmm. And how can I put that off? But then you're balancing that with the whole reason that you're doing this, which is the passion side of it. And as I texted you about, passion has been described as what brings you life. Mm-hmm. And then purpose is when you take what brings you life and you put it out there into the world. And so if me doing the alignment experience, if you doing Trace Race brings you life, but you're putting out your passion into this world in a way where each of you and Kate have your own passion, but you're serving this one thing. You're serving Trace Race. You're looking for the best thing, hopefully, you know, not out of ego, to make it as good as possible. How did you find that balance as you went through of doing this for you, but also realizing that 18 people were coming to that? That's actually a really good turnout for, I mean, I looked at it in my head, I was like, there's just no way, because like I look at somebody that does a triathlon as an elite athlete. Like I tried swimming across a pool for my scuba diving lesson in college, and he was like, do 4 down and backs. And I was like, easy. And I was about to drown. Like,
I got this.
Yeah. I was one of the most like underprepared things I'd ever felt in my life. Sure, I probably could have trained for it, but the 18 people, that's a good turnout, I feel like, for something that's a first time of doing something that to most of us commoners is like an elite thing to be doing. And so you're bringing real people into this with real expectations of, you know, where's the timeline or where's the course map. And so you're looking at how to serve the experience, serve the people, but you're also doing something that you need.
Yeah.
So does my question make sense of how do you balance those two? Do you think you can put words to that?
Yeah. If I'm understanding correctly, almost like the hosting part combined with the participating part.
Well, yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is you were doing Trace Race for you because this is something you needed. Like you needed to create this. It came at the right time. But this is also something that went out into the world and became purpose because you brought other people into it, and people were able to be involved in this. And so I guess there can be that headbutting sometimes of like, oh, this is my passion. I want to do it this certain way. But maybe it doesn't serve the experience the best way because Kate's also there too. And there's also 18 other people that are a part of this thing. How did you navigate that as you went through?
Yeah, okay, I understand better. A couple thoughts. One, I had such an appreciation of doing this alongside someone because I tend to be a little bit more perfectionistic when it comes to something I'm ideating or creating. And I think what that allowed me the space was a soundboard to really talk about what's important within this and kind of reconnect on our goal is for us to do this and to have fun and to be silly while we're at it. And I think having her kind of check me at times and vice versa, I feel like it was way more her checking me than me checking her through the experience. Because again, I just get really energized when an idea is brewing and I go into this rabbit hole of, oh my gosh, we need the swim caps, we need these things, and how do you bring it to life? And I think it was nice to have, not that she wasn't ideating alongside me in that, but had a little bit more of that grounding energy towards it. And I think with the bringing other people into the experience, something that we really, really emphasize is it's a choose your own adventure. And I think our goal in that was we knew that Trace Race for us was us getting to walk towards this goal that we each had as individuals, but chase it together. But we wanted it to be an experience where people felt that they really got to choose their finish line or choose the way that they were going about it. If they were doing it with someone, if they were only doing one leg, if they were doing 2 legs. And I think in that, what was really, really cool is it opened a lot of conversations around what is your why, what is your goal within this. And, you know, I even think back to some conversations a friend Kylie and I had in regards to like, what does that mean to do the whole thing versus to do 1 leg versus 2. And there was some grappling. I know that was had, I know for myself, when for a little while, I didn't think I would do the whole thing. I thought I would just do the swim and bike. And you know, and her, we were just talking about like in our heads, we feel like we're these professional athletes, but really we're just like these total amateurs just out, you know, frolicking through the park. And I have done a couple triathlons before, just never of this distance, but again, almost dissociating this performance achievement mindset from this joy and movement mindset was something that we really came back to. And, I think I'm just rambling away from your question at this point,
okay.
but Yeah, I think it was just helpful to have almost these people that I am walking through life with beyond this triathlon event speaking into it, but also being a friend to Emma beyond Trace Race in it helped. And, when I look at those who participated, it was really fun in the sake of I'm a part of a women's group, and every person in that women's group played a role in this triathlon. And so I think it was neat in the sake of we are doing life together beyond this triathlon. And so knowing that they can talk me off a ledge or like keep me in check of, wait a minute, it's for fun. That's all it needs to be. And of course, my mind wants to run and say, Trace Race versus the world. But just having that grounding moment of, okay, we're having a homemade triathlon for our 18 friends, and that is everything it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Do you think you guys will do it again?
The golden question.
Yeah.
So we went into this very much with the mindset of openness. Could it be a one-time thing, or is this an annual project that we're starting? I think following Saturday, we left that experience feeling like, how could we not do this again? I actually saw Kate at church yesterday, and we cried happy tears, like just reflecting briefly on the weekend. And yeah, it just felt like we created something so meaningful to the both of us that it just feels like, I don't know. I just feel like there needs to be some form of it at play still. And I think both of us are on the same page. We're not doing this distance again. We want to tone it down a notch. But yeah, I definitely think that there's room for some future Trace races.
Yeah. I found myself like kind of swallowing a smirk, like biting my cheek, getting a little teary-eyed listening to you say that, because I think I know how you feel, and it's just really cool to see someone else on the mountaintop of having done something that is truly fulfilling. You have come into contact with a very true version of yourself that took your passion and put it out into this world. And there's nothing better in this world than whenever we see purpose in our life, when we see the gifts that we've been given, the creativity, the mind, our ability, our power put out into the world. And then to look back at that and just be like, I did that. And it's not about me, but I did that, I did that, and I put something real out into this world. And so with that notion, there is no other kind of person that I'd rather have on this kind of show than somebody that has just experienced that, because it's almost like you get a portal into what is actually accessible in each of us. Like what you are right now is bringing me back to a version of myself that I felt the day after on a podcast. And not everybody's going to be able to go on a podcast and talk about this, but you can sit there and talk to a friend about that. But I just hope everybody, if you haven't experienced that mountaintop feeling of tearfully thankful with a friend or with yourself, to where you can barely sleep at night from how fulfilled you feel from having done something, or the excitement that you're about to do it. These are clues. These are clues to what we should be doing in life. And so having you on, you're the perfect person to have on, because I want people to have a look into themselves. And that's what we all do. We hear other people, and we are subliminally looking at ourselves and thinking about situations in our lives and stuff like that. And so to the person, what would you say to the person that has a hard time self-starting? I remember at the beginning of this episode, you said that you were maladaptive. I believe that was the phrase that you used, or you used to be maladaptive. But here you are on the other side of doing something that a lot of people are scared to do. Put something real out into this world. And it's bigger than just posting on social media. It's hosting an event. That's a big thing to be doing. But what would you say to somebody that has a dream and just wants to put it out there, but is spinning their wheels and is sitting in just in case land, is sitting in procrastination disguised as action, as movement? What would you say to them to get them to do it?
Gosh. I mean, one, it's so worth it. I think, two, I was in that space, right, of twiddling my thumbs and fingers and sitting out on races and, not navigating, working through something. And I think that something I have sat with a lot. I did the Artist's Way this year.
Let's
Which,
go.
again, it's just been like such a fun pocket of this year and processing a lot. But so much of what came out of that experience for me was just really appreciating the beauty of creativity and the beauty of ideas. And I do think that when you have something stirring, and whether that be an idea, an event to sign up for, whether it's, something you're attending or something you're creating, that those stirrings oftentimes when repetitive have deeper meaning or have deeper reasoning as to why that is sitting with inside you. And I think it's worth exploring. And I also think that it is oftentimes way more in reach than we realize too. And that's one thing that feels unique with this experience feeling so fresh is, I didn't run for 2 years, and I just had a run on Saturday within this triathlon that I was knee pain free and enjoying myself, during telling a friend how I feel like I'm living in an answered prayer as he's my pack mule. And I just think that one, right, you're catching me on this like high moment, but it didn't look like that for so long. And I do think that just once the gears start turning and taking that first step, they keep turning, and you start realizing that when you're walking out in purpose and you're walking out in God's will and aligning with him on that things do fall into place, the right resources, the right people. And, in the Artist's Way, she talks a lot about synchronicity. And I think that was something I saw a lot this year, and the doors that opened within this, the people that it led me towards, and just seeing the joy that it brought within our friend group too. I think that when the idea is one that belongs to you, like you almost owe it the opportunity of trying. And I think there's a cliche quote that she references in the Artist's Way of creativity is God's gift to us, and our use of that creativity is our gift to God. And I don't know, there's something cliche about it, but I just think it's really true and really impactful. And I just think, yeah, we're all like worthy of trying to explore those ideas, and life's too short. Not to be open to seeing what could be.
Life is too short. So yeah, that's something I am harping on in almost every episode. Death. Feeding death. It's probably why not as many people listen to this as I want to. Like, stop talking about death, dude.
We can talk about
death. But something you said, I think it's really important that a lot of people miss is paying attention to those stirrings. You said this stirring keeps coming up. And a lot of times we just move through life and we look at the thoughts we have and we just kind of consider them as this thing that's a part of us, and we know it, but can we remove ourselves and observe ourselves thinking something, feeling something, seeing what emotionally resonates with us there? And that's something I talked about in a recent talk somewhere, was searching for emotional resonance in our life, looking as you go out and do things in life, what gives you energy and what drains you. And then so like you felt energy when you came to the Dome, and the Dome, for those of you that are listening, is a really sick place up in Idaho Springs, Colorado, that some of our friends flipped and remodeled, epic Airbnb kind of a thing. But I digress. You said you felt energized, during that, and you noticed that was like a stirring of something in you. If you feel, and I just want to break it down really simply, and I know it seems like I'm talking at you, but I'm talking to all of us, is when you feel excited, that is a stirring. That when you feel excited, that is a sign of what you should be doing in this world, period. If you feel excited about hanging out with your friends, you need to be, doing community more. If you feel excited about gardening, make an epic garden. If you feel excited about triathlons, if you feel excited about making the most of whatever's going on in your life and overcoming the knee pain, do that. But listen to the things that get you excited, because that is a clue. We have to become detectives of our own souls, really, because our purpose doesn't come up and scream at us in the face. It's this quiet echo that like lurks in the background, and it stirs and it comes up, and we just kind of take it for granted, and we have to learn to pay attention to that. Yeah. And then the hard part is realizing life is short and that we need to take action on it. And so just a little thought I had as you were saying that. I think we're getting close to the end here. I just want to look at the questions I had to ask you here. And I think I'll just ask you one big one, and just ask you, I said that audacity was the willingness to take a bold risk.
Yeah.
and I kind of spoke for you earlier saying, do you feel like it was a bold risk doing this? But like, what is audacity to you? And how would you say, and again, because you're on the mountaintop, I want to hear somebody that's like, it's a portal into the unknown of like the power of humans, that what lies within whenever we're actually truly living in alignment. That's where you are right now, even though you're tired. Yeah. It's a beautiful version of yourself.
Yeah.
How do you be audacious and do these things? Like, I know I kind of asked this a second ago, but what is audacity and how do we be audacious in our lives?
Yeah. I think audacity comes down to listening to those stirrings and having awareness of yourself within those stirrings to create movement around them. And I mean, when I think of audacity, I think there's the word curiosity comes to me a little bit parallel in the sake of the things that our minds wander towards that have impact, that have meaning, that have significance to us and the people around us. I think having the willingness to explore them boldly and to put things into the world. And maybe when I sit with the audacity piece, I think that's the putting into the world part that really sticks out to me, because I do think you alluded to this earlier in the just in time versus just in case. Like, so often we fixate on these ideas behind the scenes. And I think there's beauty, right, when it is behind the scenes and in this pure infancy of an idea circulating and sitting with that. But I also think there's beauty in having the awareness, the discernment, and understanding of when do I feed that idea? Who do I surround that idea with to bring it from this infancy state into the world? Yeah, I think that's where real impact's created. And similar to you, and I mean, anyone who participated, I'm sure, in the alignment experience, I just think it's contagious. And when I think to the Dome Week and that friend group and some other creatives in my life, I think what I admire most is they are willing to put themselves, their art, their ideas into the world despite the outcome. And I think that's a really scary thing, because we want control, we want clout, we want the understanding and to be seen and understood. But I think just getting in the habit of putting something out there premature, or putting something out there that might feel vulnerable, and sharing a piece of yourself or a piece of your creative mind, it is contagious. And I think it's something that contributes to a bigger frequency that others can be impacted by. And I know that I've been distinctly impacted by those people in my life who aren't afraid to be their creative selves in front of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and referencing The Artist Way one more time, I don't know if you remember her saying this, but she actually speaks on audacity at a certain point. And I know that during this process, we've talked about doing things because, you know, they're true to us and they're aligned and because it's right for us. But there's also, when we look at the people in this world that have gone and done things, that maybe have the platform, all they have done really most of the time is they've just gone and done something where most people won't. And so Julia Cameron, I forget exactly what it is. She says, all too often it is audacity and not talent that moves an artist to center stage. And I think it's really important to remember, not for the center stage, but because of what can happen whenever you are audacious. You don't have to have the talent. You don't have to have every single skill and every single thing just in case figured out with your creativity and your ability and your prowess. You just need to move and do things and get that ball rolling. And so I'm really excited to have seen the journey of Trace Race from the beginning. I think you talked about it a little bit at the Dome. Yeah, I think I remember you even
I was trying to recruit you guys.
I was not even thinking about that.
We had one taker.
Sorry. Next one, though. Next one. Hey, I signed up for an ultra marathon. I'm running 100K in October.
Wait.
So, yeah.
Kidding?
Well, I'm going to try.
Yes.
We'll see. Yeah. We'll
That's
see.
exciting.
Exciting. So, getting into the sport. But
Yeah.
I'm really proud of you as your friend to see it. Just, like I said, just going back to that notion that I get so excited when I see people take action in their life. It is the most amazing thing that I see people do in this life. And so something that I wasn't really planning on doing, but I'm sure you'll watch this episode back at some point or you'll listen to it maybe years down the road when Trace Race is a multi-nation, thing and it's going all over the world. There's fireworks at the finish line.
Yes.
I would like for Emma to see Emma at the mountaintop when things get hard. So what would you say to that future version of yourself that maybe doesn't want to continue forward in anything that you're doing, because what you're doing right now and feeling right now is what you should be doing with your life. You should always be doing this,
Yeah. I get emotional in you asking me that. It's almost like a letter to your future self. And I think looking back, one, I'm hopeful there's recognition of the intentionality of different areas that came to life that made me feel alive through this project. And I think to name them, it's art, it's athletics, it's community, and it's faith. And I think why this event felt so meaningful is because it felt like an equilibrium of all three of those or four of those. And if this is the next big race, which let's put it out there, who knows? I better consult with Kate before I say that.
Right.
I just hope that through line stays and remains, because I think at the end of the day, those four things made me feel the most Emma in this experience. And that's something that I hope, compounds in future Trace races, triathlons, events, and ideas that maybe take off.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times in life, the further I go through life, and I'm sure I'll look back and be saying this and be like, you had no idea, kid. But the more that we see ourselves be powerful and do things in alignment with our passion and put it out in this world and see it become purpose when it interacts with other humans and see the impact of the beauty inside of us on this world, it just compounds, it snowballs. And so my hope for any guest I have come on, whether they're teaching about something or they're just unpacking how they feel, or for whatever the reason, is that they feel encouraged to go out and be audacious, to continue the pursuit of not audacity. Audacity is an action we take in the in-between of things. It propels us forward. It negates those years of waiting. And it makes us actually do something now. And that's something I think I'll say in every episode, is that I just want people to move and do what is right for them. And it's not right just because it's ready. It's right because it's you. And you don't have to be ready in order to go out into this world. You do things, you build as a human as you go through this, and it's okay for it to not be perfect. But Trace Race did look pretty perfect from the branding. Seriously, like the branding was like one of my favorite things to see, obviously, because I'm, seeing. I also learned this with the alignment experience. It's hard to put together the branding for an event whenever I've never hosted an event or have any pictures or photos of it. And so I bet it was probably also hard putting together like branding for a triathlon when you had no actual pictures of anybody having done it before or anything like that. And so just props to you you guys should go check out Trace Race branding. It's pretty awesome. Cool to see that creative side of you come to life. But moreover, just stoked to have had you come on. Is there anything else that you want to say before we end this episode? I don't want to cut off anything, but is there any thoughts that you have that you just want to get out right now?
Just lingering,
yeah.
Well, one, thank you. I again feel like the spontaneity of you messaging me yesterday almost felt like an extension of this weekend, and so thankful for the opportunity. And I feel like emotional Emma came out to play, and now it's like silly Emma of like, you can, and we done did it, and I'm pumped about it. And I am excited to see what's in store for this pocket of friends and Trace Race moving forward. And I think the one last thing that comes to mind, and one of the questions you had even texted earlier, was just on the concept of creativity at large. And I think there is almost a piece of me that just wants to address that quickly, because I think that's something that's unraveled a lot in this project. And that's just that creativity comes in so many forms. And while this served as an art project in many ways, I think there was creativity in the community, in the race itself. And I guess maybe the encouragement I would leave is just like, we all carry a piece of creativity within us, even if it's beyond the traditional sense that we equate it to. And I just think that part of ourselves is really worth exploring.
Well said. I have no further thoughts on that because I completely agree. I think all of us have.
Mic drop.
Mic drop. Don't drop the mics there.
Matcha sipped.
Matcha sipped through the little silly straw. So,
Yes.
well, thanks so much, Emma. Again, just an honor to have somebody come on that is fully alive. My hope is that you continue feeling this alive in every day that you live. I'm encouraged to go out and be alive with my own pursuits and to enact the things that sometimes I don't view as creative or special. They're worth putting out into this world. So thank you for that reminder. And yeah, thanks for the spontaneity. Thanks for being on the podcast.
A great way to spend a Monday evening.
Yeah.